Hi everyone, what's up? This is my KidLazy, and this will be one of my very few videos in which I'm not going to be singing or playing anything. However, this will still be related to music because today I'm going to show you how I make my guitar playthrough covers, that is, those covers in which I play directly over the original song. The reason why I decided to make this video was that I received a couple of comments from people who've been watching my stuff here on YouTube saying that my videos are fake, or at best saying that my guitars are inaudible, so they suggest that I should either use a backing track or at least turn down the volume of the original and turn up the volume of my guitars so as to make them more audible. Now, I won't go into details regarding why I prefer to play over the original instead of using a backing track, but what I want to point out by means of this video is that I do play guitar in all the videos that I make, and you do hear my guitar on the track, and it's actually quite audible, but the key to why my covers sound the way they do actually lies in the mix, because I mix all these covers in such a way that I quiet down some of the frequencies of the guitars in the original and then boost my own guitars. So in the end, about say 80 to 85% of what you hear in my final videos is in fact my own guitar. I don't claim this to be the perfect method, I don't even claim it to be a good method, but this is just the way I go about things whenever it comes to making guitar playthrough covers. And since some of you guys might be tricked into believing that I fake these videos because I use the so-called parallel recording technique, basically the purpose of this video is to clear things up for you guys out there. Now, before moving on, I'll kindly ask you to bear with me on this one because it's my very first video tutorial. I've never done this before, so I apologize in advance in case this video becomes too long or too boring. And I also apologize for the quality of the audio recording, but since I don't have any better microphone at hand, I'll just have to use this one, so again, please bear with me. Now, enough talking, let's get started. Okay, so as you can see, I've just opened up here a new project window in Reaper because I use Reaper as a digital audio workstation, and for demonstrative purposes I've chosen the song Roots Rock Riot by the band Skindred, which I went ahead and imported here onto a new track. Now, the first thing that I usually do whenever I make such covers is to work a little bit on the original song itself. And first of all, let's give it a quick listen to see what it sounds like without any effects applied to it. So this is your original song. Now, the first thing that I usually do whenever I make these covers is to alter the stereo widening of the track in order to try to muffle some of the guitar sounds in the original, and also to make some space for my own guitars to be added later on. And in order to do so, I'll go ahead and open up the effects browser here in Reaper, and I will choose a plugin called Easy Mix. Okay, and from here I will go over to the stereo enhancer section and choose stereo control, and I will turn this with control knob all the way down to 0. Okay, let's see once again how it sounded like without this effect enabled. And this will be your track with the effect turned on. Okay, so as you can see now, the guitars in the original basically lack liveliness because I have moved everything from the sides to the center of the mix, which, as I said, also makes some room for my guitars to be added later on. For your information, Easy Mix is the only plugin that I'll be using in this tutorial, which is not included with Reaper, so if you ever want to use this plugin, you will have to acquire it separately. All the other plugins that I'll be using here are included with Reaper, so you shouldn't have any problems with those. Okay, now the next thing that I do is add a compressor on the track, which will also emphasize this muffling of the guitars that I've been talking about. And in order to do so, I'll click on Add, and this time I'll choose Ria X Comp from here. And from this preset list, I will choose any of these presets which would help me, as I said, muffle the guitars even more. And in my particular case, the preset which best fits my needs will be this: super solid bass, nice opto mids. Let's see what it sounded like without this compressor turned on. And here will be your track with the compressor enabled. Okay, so as you can see, the guitars are even more muffled right now. Good. Now, you might have noticed that I have a fair amount of distortion here on the track, especially since I've also moved everything towards the center of the mix. And even though it's not noticeable at ear level, I will want to get rid of these distortions right now. And in order to do so, I'll go ahead and also use a limiter, which will be this Lydon/MP1136 peak limiter. Anyway, okay, I'll go ahead, select it, and I will set from here the threshold to 0. And detector mode, I'll change this from mono to stereo, and hard clip will be on. Okay, let's see how it sounded like before. And this is what it will sound like after. Okay, so as you can see, the difference is not actually noticeable at ear level, but if you look over here at the view meters, you will definitely notice that the limiter is doing its job, because I no longer have these red peaks over here. Okay, so at this point we've pretty much finished working on the original track. I've completely messed up the original mix, and right now everything literally sounds like crap. But on the other hand, I've muffled some of the guitars from the original, and I've also made room for my own guitars to be added later. And if what I've done so far doesn't make any sense to you right now, I'm sure it will start doing so as soon as I add my guitars to the mix. So let's move on to step number 2 and throw my guitars into the picture. Alright, so at this moment I have just finished recording the guitars for the project. I've put them on 2 separate tracks here in Reaper, and I've also linked them to this parent track so as to make it easier to make any further global adjustments to the volume or anything else that might be necessary later on. First of all, let's give these 2 tracks a quick listen to see what they sound like. Okay, and this will be the second guitar. Okay, so as you can see, both guitars are playing the exact same thing. The only difference lies in the tone and also in the input volume. This is how I recorded them from my Digitech FX processor. Now, you might be wondering why I decided to record the same thing twice. And this is actually the so-called double tracking technique, which I always use in my recordings because I think it gives a more natural feel to the guitars in the stereo field, but this is not actually the point of our conversation. So moving on with our tutorial, what I'm going to do next is try to bring the volume of these 2 tracks to the same level, because as you could see and also hear a bit earlier, this track is louder than this one. So I will have to make some adjustments to the volume of each track individually so as to level them. Okay, and I will tell you the exact settings that worked for me in this particular case. I've turned this track to minus 1.5 decibels, and this one will be plus 6.5. Now let's see what the guitars sound like right now. I'm going to be looking at the levels over here, the peak levels, to see if they are pretty much the same or not. Okay, so as you can see, they're pretty much leveled. There are no big discrepancies between them, so everything should be fine now. Alright, so now that I have the volume set, what is left for me to do is just pan the 2 tracks. And one will be panned 100% to the left, and the other one 100% to the right. Let's see how these 2 tracks sound together again. And let's get back to the way in which our song sounded like so far without my guitars. Okay, and let's see how it sounds like with my guitars on. So as you can see, something has definitely changed right now. The guitars are much more prominent again, and these are actually my own guitars, the ones that I've just recorded, and panned to the sides. That is exactly the space that I've emptied a bit earlier during the first step. However, in spite of all the volume adjustments that I've already made, I still want to make the guitar sound even louder than that. But this is something I'll be dealing with during the next step of this tutorial. Alright, so to sum up, so far I have silenced a bit of the guitars from the original, then made some space for my own guitars to be added later on, after which I recorded these two guitar tracks that you see in here, and I've integrated them in the mix in the space that I had left empty for that. However, we're still not quite done yet because there are still a couple more adjustments to be done, this time on the master track itself. And the first thing that I'm going to do is add some more compression, which would give me this time a bit more liveliness in the entire mix. And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna open up the effects browser and choose again the plugin called ReaX Comp. So here's your plugin, and from the preset list I will choose this time Mastering 3 Band. By the way, as you might have seen when I've made the adjustments on the original song, I don't really bother that much adjusting individual settings with these plugins. I just use whatever preset best suits my needs, so I just don't bother about anything else. Okay, let me turn off the plugin and show you how the song sounds like without it. And here's how it's gonna sound like with the effect turned on. Okay, so as I said, this preset gives just a bit more liveliness to my mix. Now, if you remember, at the end of step 2 of this tutorial, I was saying that even though I've added my guitars to the mix, they still don't sound quite loud enough. Now it's finally time to fix this problem by giving the guitars a serious boost. And in order to do so, I'm going to alter one more time the stereo widening of the master track. So I'm gonna go ahead, open up the effects browser one more time and choose Easy Mix again. Use the exact same stereo enhancer and stereo control preset, but this time instead of turning the width control knob down to 0, we're gonna turn it up to 11. Let's see one more time what it sounded like without the effect. And here is how it's gonna sound like with the stereo control on. So as you can see, this boosted the size of the mix and the guitars are much more noticeable right now. Now the third and last thing that I'm gonna do is use one more time a limiter, because as you can see here, again we have a bit of distortion, which is again not noticeable at ear level, but nevertheless we want to get rid of that. So I'm gonna go ahead, open up the effects browser, and I will use the exact same plugin that I've used for the original song as well, and the settings are exactly the same. Threshold set to 0, detector mode to stereo, and hard clip on. And I'm not gonna give you before and after previews because the difference is not noticeable, but if I play the track one more time, you'll notice that the peaks will be gone. So, as you can see, the limiter is definitely doing its job right now. Alright, so at this moment I would personally say that I've finished mixing this particular track. I feel like I have managed to make the guitars, as I said, much more noticeable in this mix, and also I feel like I've managed to achieve a pretty good balance between the volume of the original and that of the guitars. Now let's listen just one more time to the way in which our mix sounds at this particular stage. And this time let's start from somewhere around here, let's say.
So the music flows, everybody knows. Messing for murder in the room tonight. You know we're bouncing everyone uptight. We keep on moving from the wrong to right. Rock, rock, right.
So as you can see, the guitar, as I said before, is much more noticeable, and it has tons of liveliness in it, so it's exactly what I wanted to achieve in the beginning. And if you pay attention to this, if I mute the guitars, the track will sound like this.
So the music flows, everybody knows. Messing for murder.
So it's much more muffled. Let me turn the guitars back on.
So the music flows, everybody knows. Messing for murder in the room tonight. You know we're boxing.
So as you can see, this is what I've tried to demonstrate you. So this is actually my guitar. This is what you actually hear in the mix. So at this point, I would pretty much say that I finished mixing this track, because not only that I've made some space for my own guitars and then boosted them so as to make them more noticeable, but also I've managed to achieve a pretty good balance, I could say, between the volume of the original and that of my guitars. This is also an aspect to which I pay very much attention whenever I make a guitar playthrough cover, because for me personally, it's very important to have a good balance between the volume of the original and that of your own guitar. I've listened to a lot of covers here on YouTube in which the volume of the guitars was like so loud that the original simply became undistinguishable, and to me honestly that really sounds like crap, because I think it's really annoying to have a guitar riff with something, you know, like mumbling in the background. For me it's all or nothing. I mean, I think that both the guitars and the original track should work together, even in the context of a cover, rather than having, you know, one louder than the other. And it's really a pity for that to happen, because for example, if I come across a cover where the guitarist plays like really cool, but the guitars are way too loud and the original becomes muffled and undistinguishable, I will definitely lose my patience at some point, and no matter how cool the guy plays it, it will sound so annoying to me that I'll eventually skip that video. And as I said, that's definitely a pity. So this is why, again, I pay a lot of attention when it comes to balancing the original track with my own guitars. And coming back to this particular song that I've been mixing right now, as I said, I think that the balance between the tracks is already good enough. So at this point, I wouldn't really feel like making any further adjustments to the volumes. I'll just leave them the way they are. Of course, if I had felt like the guitars are still not loud enough, of course I would have gone ahead and increased the volume of the guitars and perhaps even lowered the volume of the original. But in this case, I don't really think that it's necessary. Okay guys, so it looks like we finally reached the end of this tutorial regarding how I record and mix my guitar playthrough covers. Like I said in the beginning, I don't claim this to be the perfect method. It's not even necessarily a good one, and I myself am still experimenting with different settings for it. But nevertheless, I think it can help you achieve a pretty decent overall sound of your cover, especially if you balance the volumes well. I use these settings that I've shown you in all my guitar playthrough covers, and I also hope that with the help of this video, there will no longer be any doubts that I do play guitar in those videos. That being said, if you've managed to follow me up to this point, I thank you very much for watching, and even if you did not manage to do so, I still thank you. And if you have any questions or suggestions or anything to say regarding the contents of this video, feel free to post your thoughts here in the comment section, and I will read them and take them all into account. So once again, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.